Hilchos Bias Hamikdash Perek Shmini. The laws of coming into the temple, chapter 8. Literally a direct continuation from yesterday, listing the mumim, the blemishes that a Kohen cannot have in order to serve, except that yesterday, all the blemishes that we listed apply both to humans and to animals. That means whether you're a Kohen, you cannot serve if you have that thing. If you're an animal, if it's an animal, it cannot be brought as a sacrifice. Today, we're going to be listing only blemishes that are unique to people. That means if any of these things you find them in animals, they're no problem. Only on people, they're bad for Kohanim, they cannot serve in the temple if they have these things. And it's almost double. Yesterday was 50, today's going to be 90. Halacha Aleph, Kol hamumin hamiyuchadin ba'adam. All the blemishes that are unique to people, tishim, are 90. I couldn't find pictures for everyone, but I tried to find just at least to help understand all the different things that Rambam will describe. V'zehu praton, these are their details. Shmeina barosh. We begin with the head. There are 8 deformities in the head that wouldn't qualify for being a Kohen who could serve. Ve'elu hein, then they are. Misha emtza kod kodoi, shoikeya lamata. Somebody who the middle of his skull sinks downwards, as though it were pressed in by hand. I found a picture of a baby, they call it with a flat head on the top. The skull is just pushed down. Misha emtza kod kodoi, oile lemaila. The opposite, we call this today a cone head. Somebody who the middle of his skull projects upwards, kamei beitza, that Rambam calls it like an egg-shaped head. This is also babies, many of them at birth have this cone head and then it settles, but some people actually stay this way. Number 3, Misha pa'as reishay yaitze keneged panav kamei makeves. Somebody who the front of his head projects outward like a hammer. Okay, like imagine this guy, okay? The hammerhead. But no, literally it refers to a deformity in the skull. Here you can see a boy that has it. It causes the tissue and the skull bones to enlarge in the front. So it sticks out. This is pretty light. It's not extreme, but of course if it were to be more extreme, it's even worse. But even this would be considered a deformity for the Beis Hamikdash. Number 4, Misha Reisha Yaitze Me'achayrav Keneged Arpoi, the opposite. A person, we call this an occipital bun in today's language. The back of the head sticks out towards the back of the neck. That's number 4. Number 5, Misha Reisha Rachav V'Yaitze Mikanu Mikan. Somebody whose head is too wide on the sides, extending on either side, in which it looks like the head is positioned on the neck, like a turnip is positioned on leaves. It's like very widely spread out.
Like the description.
Pretty poetic description. I couldn't find. I don't know the proper name for it. There's projections on the side where they stick out. They say the Rambam drew this. Not exactly what the Rambam drew this diagram to bring it out. In which it's like, it's spreading. Usually our heads are oval, right? But then here you have more of like a circular head because it's pointing on both sides out. Number 6, hakereach, she'ein b'chol reishay seyar kol ikar. A bald person who doesn't have any hair on his head, completely bald. V'im yesh bei shita shel seyar mukefes me'achayrav me'oizen lo'iz. And even if he has one ring of hair or a line of hair going from ear to ear through the back, kosher. That's already kosher. It's not fully bald. Number 7, Misha Haya Haseyar Makif Me'oizen La'oizen Milefanav Bilvat. I couldn't find the picture of this either, but somebody who has a ring of hair only on the front. So it goes from ear to ear, but it's over here instead of over here. Ushar HaRoish Kereachu, and the rest of the head is bald. Hari Apostle, he is disqualified. And number 8, Misha Haya Haseyar Shalei Makif Es Kol HaRoish Saviv Milefanav Umiacharav. Somebody who has hair all around, this is quite common actually, it circles his head all around, front and back, ve'ein sham seyar ba'emtza. And there's no hair in the middle. Gam zeh kereach upasol. That's called bald and that's disqualified. So most people over 50, 40, 50, that's it, you're out. Unless you have all the hair in your head, you're considered bald. Halacha beis, shnayim batzavar. Moving down to the neck, 2 deformities in the neck. The Elohim, they are the following. Number 1, Misha Tzavare Shekeya Harbe, somebody whose neck is exceedingly sunken. Ad shenim tzarei sheki'ilu hu munach al kseifav, as if his head is on his shoulders. This is the guy who holds the Guinness World Records for the shortest neck in the world. It's tiny. Literally, his head is coming into his shoulders. And on the other hand, you have Misha Tzavari Aruch Harbe, Achanire Keshamut Mibing Sefer. This is an actual guy. You can find him on YouTube. His neck is extremely extended till it looks like his head is literally detached from his shoulders. It's like a walking head on its own.
That's a real? Is this like
Yeah, real. This is a real guy. It's a real guy. Yeah.
Wow.
Type in longest neck in the world into Google. You'll find this guy.
That's kind of scary, actually.
It is. Yeah. That's. It literally looks like it's detached. By the way, in Asia, this was considered in times of old. This was considered, at least for women, a sign of beauty. So much so that when they were babies, they used to put these rings around their neck. They still do it until today in Africa, some places, and it kind of forces. Yes, you keep on adding a ring, and it forces the neck to grow. I think this is a little bit overdone, but definitely in the Beis Hamikdash it's a deformity. Halacha Gimel, Arba ba'oizen, 4 deformities on the ear, again unique to people. The Eluhen, and they are Misha shtei oznav ktanes harbe, somebody who has tiny ears. I found this picture, mamish, so small, proportional to the rest of the head. Misha shtei oznav nefuches, somebody who has 2 bloated ears, puffed up ears, doimes lisvei, like a sponge. Number 3, Misha oznav midul doles lamata, somebody whose ears hang down like the ears of a goat. And Misha achas me oznav meshuna michaverta b'mareha, somebody who one of his ears looks very different than the other in the way it appears. Either the shape, size, it's asymmetrical to the other ear. Halacha dalid chamisha bagvinim, 5 blemishes on the eyebrows. The Eluhen, they are the following: Misha ein le'seir bigvinav, somebody who doesn't have any hair on his eyebrows at all. V'hu gibein ha'omer b'Torah. That's the word gibein. Torah uses the word gibein to describe one of the blemishes. It actually means a person with no eyebrows. Misha gvinav shoichvin, somebody who has such long eyebrows that they lay down, they hang over his eyes. Misha ein le'ala gavin echad, somebody only has 1 eyebrow. Misha yesh le'gvinin yestar al shnayim, somebody who has more than 2 eyebrows. Misha echad migvinav meshuna mechaveiroi, or somebody who one of his eyebrows is different than the other. And different means bein shesareh shel zeh aruch usareh shel zeh katzar. Different could mean the hair of one of them is long and the hair of one of them is short, but it could also mean bein shesareh shel echad shachar usareh shel hasheni lavanei adam. You could have a difference in color. One of the eyebrows hair is black, and one of them is white or red. Hayil v'yesh b'neim shinoi zeh. Since there is a difference between them, is a puzzle, it's disqualified. Arba berisa ayin. Halacha hey, 4 blemishes apply to the eyelashes. The Eluhen, they are the following: Misha ein le'seir klal berisa einav. Somebody who doesn't have any eyelashes at all. Like this person here. Misha sa'ar risei einav merube me'ube harbe. Somebody who has eyelashes that are big in quantity and thick. This is a guy in Ukraine. He's supposed to have the longest eyelashes in the world. How much big eyelashes? Misha sa'ar echad merisei einav mishune misa'ar ris acher. What if somebody has different color eyelashes or different style eyelashes, different eyes? One is black, one is white, one is dripping, one is, in other words, fallen off, and one is thick hair. All considered into one category of a mum. And number 4, Misha af apav sgures ma'at ve'ena niftaches harbe kishar kol ha'adam. You see this by Asians a lot. Somebody whose his eyelids are kind of closed and they don't open fully like most people. That's the 4 in the eyelashes. Halacha vav achad asar ba'inayim, 11 blemishes in the eye. Ve'eluhen, they are the following: Misha hayu shtei einav l'mayla min ha'makam haroi lahem. Somebody whose eyes are positioned too high in the face. I couldn't find pictures, I just put pictures of an eye. Somebody who's, right, because everything has to be proportional. If your eyes are too high, krevis mipadachtai, too close to your forehead, that is a deformity. Number 2, Misha hayu shtei einav lemata mimakam haroi lahem. Your eyes are too low in the face, lower than where they should be. Number 3, Misha hayu shtei einav agulais ve'enam nimshachais ba'oirech ma'at kisharo einayim. Somebody whose eyes were round, literally circular. Most of our eyes are oval, elongated a little bit like a longish leaf. Huh? Yeah, more like an almond shape, yeah. This person, his eyes were literally round. That's a blemish. Number 4, Misha einav muzaros, somebody whose eyes are strange in that ve'hen yoitzos, they pop out. Ke'ene hanomer, like a leopard. Like the eyes of a leopard. Ukamishu mistakel be'es shekayes kas harva. Like somebody who would look at you when he's very angry, and your eyes kind of like popping out. yes,
Kind of pop out. Yeah.
that is
Condition.
unacceptable. Medical condition, it's not good, disqualified for the Bis Hamikdash. Number 5, Misha Einav Gdoiles Harbe Keshal Egel. Somebody has too big of eyes, like a calf. Number 6, Misha Einav Ktanois Keshal Avaz. Somebody has too small eyes, like a goose. Number 7, Misha Dmav Zolfeis Tamid. Somebody who's constantly tearing up. Number 8, Misha Lachluchis Nimsheches Mereish Einim Mikeneged Achaitem. Somebody constantly has moisture coming out from the edge of the eye near the nose. Many people in the morning, you have like some things that come out, but this guy constantly has this coming down. Or the other edge, the tail of the eye, at the side of the temples. Number 10, Misha Mikabetz Risei Einav V'oitzman Ma'at. We call this squinting. Somebody who brings together his eyelids and closes them a little bit. When he sees light or when he wants to be precise in seeing. Yeah, well today we have glasses for that. Basically it means your vision is not perfect. Okay. If you have to squint, that's a mum. Next, Misha Re'iyas Eine Me'urbeves. Somebody who's cross-eyed. His vision is mixed. Ad Sharayas HaCheder V'Sa'aliyah Ka'achas. He would see the first story and the second story together on equal level. V'yivada davar zeh be'ez sheyedaber im chavereh. The Rambam, the physician, he says, you could know this when he speaks to a friend. It looks like he's looking at somebody else, cross-eyed. And the final one, Misha achas me'enav mishuna mechaverta. If somebody's one eye is different than the other eye, and again, this means any difference, bein bimkoima, bein bimar'el, whether in its placement, or one is high, one is low, or in its appearance. One is black, one is colored. One is small, one is big. As long as between the two there's a difference, pasul, that's disqualified. Halacha Zayin, Shisha B'chaitem, 6 blemishes in the nose. The Eluhain, and they are the following. Number 1, Misha Ikar Chatmai Sheikeya. Somebody who the core of his nose is sunken. Even if he can't pass a brush over both his eyes at once. It's not that flat. It's not totally flat, but it's flat somewhat, like this guy. That's the word charum. Torah describes one of the blemishes as charum. Charum means a flattened nose. Number 2, misha emtza chatmai bailet lemaila. Somebody whose nose tip is upturned, sticks out upwards, like this guy. Number 3, misha oiketz chatmai noitef lamata. Somebody who the tip of his nose droops downwards. Number 4, misha chatmai akom letzadech. Somebody whose nose is crooked to one side. Here you can see it. I couldn't find like a front picture, but you can basically see from the bottom how it's opposite to one direction. Number 5, misha chatmai gadol me'ivarav. Somebody whose nose is disproportionately bigger than the rest of his limbs. And number 6, misha chatmai katan me'ivarav. Somebody whose nose is disproportionately smaller to his limbs. The ketzad meshad, and I say, how do you measure a Jewish nose? How do you know if a nose is too big or too small? Be'etzba ktana sha'al yadai. You take your pinky, the smallest finger. Im haya chatmai gadol mimena katan mimena harei zamum. If your nose is larger or smaller than your pinky, that's a mum. Now, this basically means the tip of the nose. It's not so much the thickness, obviously, right? Because the thickness is tiny. But we're talking about as it comes out. If the main bridge, yes, exactly. If your pinky fits evenly on your nose, that's pretty good. And most people do. Yeah. Others have a very thick nose or a small one. And then you would know that that's a mum. Halacha ches, shleisha basfasayim, 3 on the lips. The Eluhain, pretty simple. They are misha svasei ha'alyayna, oidefes ala tachtayna, misha svasei ha'tachtayna, oidefes ala ha'alyayna. Somebody whose upper lip runs over the lower lip, or the lower lip runs over the upper lip. And number 3, misha piv rafui v'rira yored mi piv. Somebody whose mouth is loose, he can't control, and there's constantly drool or saliva coming out. That's a blemish. Halacha tesh leisha babeten, 3 on the stomach, ve'eluhain, and they are the following: misha kreisei tzava, somebody whose belly is bloated. Misha tabura yoitze ve'ene sheikeya kishar b'nei adam, an outie. If your belly button sticks out, doesn't stick in like normally, that's a mum. And number 3, misha dadav sheikh v'nal bitnei kedadei isha, somebody who would have almost like breasts of a woman, they're hanging down onto his stomach, that's a mum. Halacha yod shleisha bagav, 3 in the back. Ve'eluhein, they are the following: misha shidrasei akuma, somebody whose spine is crooked. This means to the side. Number 2, misha yatzasa chulya mishidrasei, somebody who one of the vertebrae of his spine became dislocated. Bein shabalta lachutz, ayd nichnasa lapnim, ayd natzalat dadin, no matter which way. Whether it went outside, inward, to the sides, v'zeu bal chatoy teres. That's called in the Gemara a person with a chatoy teres. Usually the word chatoy teres means hunchback, which means only one way, right? It folds outwards. But the Rambam says it means any way. Any way it folds, if it's dislocated, that's bad. And number 3, misha tofach basar begabay, somebody who's the flesh of his back extended, v'nasa kichatoy teres, and it becomes like a hunchback. You may check his spine and it'll be perfectly straight, but the flesh is what got messed up. That's a blemish. You look like a hunchback, you classify as a hunchback. 6 blemishes on the hands. They are the following: somebody who has an extra finger on his hands, even if it was even 6 and 6. This is a guy in Africa. He has literally 6 fingers on each hand. Naturally, that's how he was born.
1, 2, 3, 4.
You see, it almost looks regular.
He has 2.
2 pinkies almost.
5 and 1.
It's 5 and 1. Yeah. Fascinatingly, if you cut off the extra finger, it's kosher. But if it had its own bone, even if you cut it, it's disqualified because it's its own. It means it's its own unit. So even if you cut it, you can't deny the reality there was an extra unit on the skeleton. Somebody who's missing a finger. Naturally, we're talking about, not cut off. Somebody who his fingers are basically webbed till under the joint. Right? We have 3 joints, and they're all split. But what if his fingers were webbed? If you cut them down to the joint, kosher, that's kosher. Which joint are we talking about? The first joint closest to the palm. Next, somebody whose fingers are riding over each other. Like this. Naturally, that would be a mum. Misha pika yotzes migudlai, somebody who has a projection emerging from his thumb. You see this sometimes, people have this little ball coming out. And misha hu iter yad yaminai, somebody who's a lefty. A lefty is a mum unique to people.
Really?
Yes. V'im haya sheled bishtei yadav kosher. If he was ambidextrous, he could rule with both of his hands. That's kosher. But a primary lefty is a mum. Halacha yud beis arba be'evrei azera. 4 mumim in the reproductive organs. Ve'eluhen, they are the following: misha kis habeitzim gadol va'aruch ad shemagia la'arkubaysav. Somebody whose sac of his testicles is big and long till it reaches his knees. Misha hagid shaloi aruch ad shemagia la'arkubaysav. Somebody whose shaft of the organ is too long, it reaches down to the knees. Misha nimrechu ashachav. Somebody whose the membrane around the testicles were crushed. Vehema kis shal beitzim. Ashachav is the scrotum, the sac. And misha haruach ba'ashachav, somebody whose sac is inflated. V'hu miroyach ashech ha'amur b'Torah. That's the word miroyach ashech in the Torah. It was in one of the verses here. Miroyach ashech. That's a bloated sac. Scrotum, yeah. Halacha yud gimel chamisha asar b'shoykayim u'v'raglayim. 15 deformities in the thighs and the hips and the legs and the feet. Ve'eluhen, they are the following: misha shoykav akumas. First of all, somebody whose general legs are crooked outwards. What is it called? Bandy?
Bandy legs, yeah. They kind of roll around.
Yes. You put your feet together, you see Bashmona Esrei. Put your feet together, and the feet come out like a rainbow. A little bit, but this is referring to like a excessive amount.
You can notice it right away.
Yeah.
I mean, if you see somebody with like
abnormally large circle, yeah. Misha pikasa yaitzeis, somebody whose pika extends. What's a pika? It's an ankle bone. Pika is that round bone just above the ankle on the inside. When you put your feet together, if you're not wearing shoes, you can feel it. It's called a pika because it resembles the needle or the weaving tool that was used by women to spin thread. Misha keva yoytze la'achayra, somebody whose heel extends backwards, outwards. As though the thigh or the leg is positioned in middle of the foot. Usually our feet extend, right? They're at the back, and then it extends outwards. What if this thigh was placed over here in the middle? Misha parsesav rechavis keshalavas afal pisha einon klutais keshalavas. Somebody whose feet are wide like a goose, even if they're not webbed like a goose. Misha pika yetzes migudala, somebody who has a protrusion coming out from his big toe. Misha yesh be'agle etzba yesera afilu sheish v'sheish, if you have an extra toe, even 6 and 6. V'imchatcha kosher, again if you cut it, it's kosher v'hush l'yeba etzem, provided there's no bone. Misha chaser achas me'etzba yisragla, somebody who's missing a toe. Misha etzba yisav murkavay al gabezu, somebody whose toes are piled up, again, one over the other. Misha hayu etzba yisragla klutis at lamata min aperek, somebody whose toes were webbed till the end of the joint. V'mayu ada perek, if it was till the joint, or shechatchan v'yifrishan, or he cut them and separated them, kosher, it's kosher. Misha ragle kula shava, somebody whose foot is completely equal width. Our feet at the back, they're more narrow, then they kind of widen at the front. This is a guy, shenimtza reichav pasets ba'osav kereichav akevai. The width at the point of his toes are like the width at the point of the ankle, the heel. As if it's one equal piece. Misha ragle akuma doima lemagal. Somebody has what we call a high arch. His foot, the under part of his foot is crooked, like a sickle. Shenimtza pas ragle sheyesh beha etzbois. Im akevai ki iluhim shnei rashi akesha. So extreme that the end of the foot, where the toes are, and the back of the foot with the heel are as though they're two edges of a rainbow. That's how high it goes. Misha ragle chalula, somebody whose foot is hollow. The middle is high raised above the ground. When he stands on his heel and on his toes. Next, somebody whose feet are constantly rubbing against each other. When he walks, he can't maintain the balance of keeping his feet separate. His knees keep jostling against each other as he walks, knocking against each other as they walk. And mishu iter beregel yemina, again a lefty on the foot, is a mu. Halacha yudalad arba b'chol haguf. There are 4 that can be in the rest of the body. Ve'elohen, and they are misha gufa gadol me'ivardav. Somebody whose torso is disproportionately bigger than the rest of his limbs. Misha gufa katan me'ivardav. Somebody whose torso is proportionally smaller than the rest of his limbs. Ha'aruch b'yoser, a super tall person, one of the tallest people who ever lived. Hananas v'akater b'yoser, and a midget, smallest person. Adshiu muflagin mishara'am. What makes them considered to be a balmum is if they're too different than everybody else. Not a regular tall guy. They're way too tall or way too short. Halacha tesvav shmeina b'rabasar, 8 on the flesh, on the skin, of the flesh. Ve'eluhen, they are hakushi, a black. Halavan b'yeser k'megvina, super white like cheese. Ha'adem kashani, somebody who's dark red like crimson. Bale negayim tohirim, somebody who has white spots. They're considered pure, not saras. Just shenishtana ha'oir machmas atzmai, where the skin pigmentation changed on its own, k'may ha'boyak, like a boyak, which is a deep white spot. Shenishtana ha'oir machmas davar acher, if somebody's skin got changed to something else, the scar of a burn. V'zeh bichlal negayim tohirim, which is also part of the kosher pure lesions, but it's mum. Misha haisa ba'er panav shuma sheyesh baser, somebody who has a mole in his head, in his face, that grows hair. Afal pisha eina ki isra la kolshu, even if it's not even the size of a coin, smallest size, doesn't matter. Misha haisa ba'er panav shuma ki isra yoser, somebody who has on the skin of his face just a mole with no hair, if it's the size of a coin, that's disqualified. Bale hadil dulin, people who have kind of like warts or hanging things. Vushi yedalda la erva abasar, skin or flesh kind of hang down. Or fluids of the skin are distended and they kind of hang down in any part of the body. That's a blemish. There are 4 other general blemishes, not deformities, but conditions. And they are somebody who's deaf mute. Hashaita, somebody who's mentally disturbed. Somebody who's epileptic, he has seizures. Afilu liyamim rabim, even once every many days. And misha ruach ra meva'asasoi tamid be'itim yiduyim, somebody who has a bad spirit possessing him at times or constantly. Some say it means depression, some say it means a heaviness, or just an evil spirit. Halacha Yudzayin nimtzu kol amumin apoislim makoyanim. If we take yesterday's list and today's list, 50 and 90, all the possible blemishes to disqualify a Kohen are me'av arboim, 140. V'zehu kolam, and in total, this is their list. Shmoina b'roish, there are 8 on the head. Shnayim b'tzavar, 2 on the neck. Tisha b'aznayim, 9 on the ears. V'chamisha b'gvinim, 5 on the eyebrows. Shiva b'risa ayin, 7 on the eyelids. Tisha asar b'inayim, 19 in the eyes. Tisha b'chaitim, 9 on the nose. Tisha b'peh, 9 on the mouth. Shlosha b'beten, 3 on the stomach. Shlosha b'gav, 3 on the back. Shiva b'yadayim, 7 on the hands. V'shisha asar b'evri azera, 16 on the reproductive organs. V'esrim b'raglayim, 20 on the feet. Ushmeina b'chal haguf, 8 in the rest of the body. Ushmeina b'rabasar, 8 in the skin. V'shiva b'koyach haguf v'reichai, and 7 in the power of the body, like bodily odors and its smell. Ukvar nifritu kulan echad echad, we've listed them all, one by one. Ve'elu poslam epidemarius ha'ayin, in addition to that, they also added some that are disqualified, not because they're a blemish, just because they look bad. Marius ayin. And they are 2 things. Misha noshru riseyenav, somebody he had eyelashes, but they fell out. Afal pisha nishar aseir beikar, even if there's pores, and you can see that there used to be hairs there. It wasn't born without it. This is fell out. Umisha nitlu shinav, and somebody whose teeth have been removed. It's not a mum, but it looks bad, and therefore they said that the Kohanim shouldn't serve with such a blemish either.